Welcome to Empowered Transformation with your host, Christa Dawson. Over the next hour, you will learn about tools that will support your healing process and living a life full of purpose and joy. Now, here is Christa.
Hello and welcome to Empowered Transformation. I am Christa, your host today, and today is going to be an hour packed full of really cool information. And I'll be elaborating on that in just a moment, but I'd like to start, like I always do, with taking a moment to get intentional, to get here, to arrive, so that you are in the best place possible to hear what we are sharing today. So I'm going to have you take a moment wherever you are. If you're in a place where you can sit and close your eyes, great. If you're not, just show up in the best way you can. So know that you are working with your energy all the time. And the subtlest adjustments in how you show up can adjust your energy and how you feel in any given moment. So we're going to begin by aligning your posture, aligning your head over your shoulders with your chin gently tucked, as if somebody had a string attached to the back of your head, gently tugging up on the back of your head, elongating your neck, inviting your shoulders gently back and down. If you'd like, you can inhale your shoulders up to your ears and exhale, slowly rolling your shoulders gently back and down, just cultivating a nice open chest and stacking your shoulders over your hips. And just notice how that feels with that nice straight spine and that aligned posture. Notice if it feels uncomfortable having an open chest or an open heart. Sometimes when we armor, or if we're a person that feels like we have to protect ourselves all the time, we do a lot of armoring with our posture. So notice if that maybe feels a little uncomfortable and just observe that without judgment. And then the next piece I'm going to invite you to do is to allow your tongue to completely relax in your mouth. Without going into too much detail, your tongue is attached to a nerve that activates the rest and digest response in your body. The break, if you will. It's impossible to worry when your tongue is resting on the floor of your mouth. The hard part can be keeping it there. So just allowing your tongue to completely relax in your mouth. You may notice or feel it on the sides of your teeth or maybe on the roof of your mouth. That's okay. What's most important is that your tongue is completely relaxed. And as you allow your tongue to completely relax in your mouth, allow your breath to slow and soften. And as you begin to relax and arrive, let me share just briefly why I am hosting this show. My intention for hosting this show was to introduce energy psychology specifically, to understand that a little better. It's understanding the mind-body connection more deeply, and introducing you to modalities that are powerfully assisting people into this mind-body connection, because this mind-body connection can so deeply invite us into into deep healing, much more than just relying on our cognition alone. And just allowing ourselves to learn how to operate from the mind-body connection, not only allowing the body to be cued by the mind, but the mind to be cued by the body. And it's my hope and my intention that you leave this hour learning something that you didn't know, adding a tool to your arsenal, and most importantly, that you find your way to a deeper understanding of maybe behaviors or thoughts or beliefs that you have that maybe you're uncomfortable with, or you don't like, or they're harmful for you in your life, but a better understanding of maybe why you have developed those thoughts or beliefs or behaviors, and understanding that they are coping mechanisms that you have developed in your life to help you cope and survive. And so with that understanding, that you come away with this hour with more, or from this hour with more compassion for yourself. We don't resist our way through letting things go. We relax our way through letting things go. And we relax when we know that there is compassion and love and acceptance. So, taking a moment to breathe in this intention of hope and compassion, and exhale nice and long and slow. Allow yourself to arrive and welcome. So in that brief segment, there were several tools that I introduced. They don't have to be used all at once. They can be used one at a time. And over the course of the next few weeks, I'll be introducing these tools in the Christa's tip for the week. So be looking for that at the end of the second segment. So today I am really excited to invite my guest, Amy Vitacolonna. She came at the referral, or was referred to me by my dear friend Tabitha. If you've been listening to the shows, she was my connection to Amy. And today we're going to be talking about EMDR. And although EMDR doesn't technically fall under energy psychology, from what I'm told, it is a modality that has been powerfully used in therapy. And I really wanted to showcase EMDR and offer you a little better understanding of what it is and how it works. And so Amy is going to do that for us today. Amy is a licensed professional counselor and a mental health counselor. She is an approved consultant with EMDRIA, and I'm going to let her tell us more about that when the time is right. And she takes therapists through the certification process and basic training as a coach and consultant. And if I'm incorrectly announcing these things, she will correct it for me. And she has a private practice, I believe, in South Carolina.
Yes, South Carolina.
Is that right? Yes, private practice in South Carolina, and recently opened a group practice.
Yes.
And specializes in attachment-informed EMDR, and is passionate about incorporating her faith into her work with EMDR as well. So, and I want to just take a moment, as Amy on it, we've met several times in preparation for this interview.
Yes.
And we, introducing these ideas, terms that we use in, clinical settings like attachment theory or stages of development, neural networking, that sound very flat, or can sound flat and uninteresting. But I assure you that when you begin to understand what attachment theory is, and you understand the depth of this theory, and it's just, this is life-changing stuff. So don't allow the bland titles to detour you from the depth that's going to be presented here today. So without further ado, welcome Amy.
All right, thank you. Good to be here. Thank you so much.
Good, I'm so glad you're here. So let's start our hour here with hearing a little bit more about Amy. Tell us why and how you came upon this work as a therapist.
Yes, it's been a journey, that's for sure, because Amy as a therapist, started my career as a therapist quite late in life, as the academic world may say. So I started my master's degree program at 36. The reason I went into therapy, I started my career outside of, straight from my undergrad into juvenile detention. And so there I was a counselor, not licensed, but they consider them counselors at the detention level. And I was I was face to face with juveniles with a really strong, intense, lots of trauma, lots of pain. So I worked in that field, became a parole officer, and then quickly stopped because parole officer wasn't really my thing. And so I went into ministry and then raised my children. And I did several different things in business. So I developed a business skill set. At the same time, I was home for my kids. So it was a hardworking process, but and then that led up to me becoming a therapist. I went into ministry with women that were getting out of human trafficking. And so my entrance to that was in Washington State, where I previously lived. In 2000, they actually created human trafficking task forces all over the country, where they felt that there was intense issues with human trafficking, yes, in our own country, which is scary. Don't mean to scare everybody, but so that was back in 2000, where it became a federal offense through force, fraud, or coercion. That was the federal determination. So I, through ministry, helped women get out of human trafficking in Texas. So I moved from Washington to Texas, where I became really intensely involved with human trafficking. And so after I took it as far as I could in my own self, and, with God's help, I just found myself at the end of what I could do. And so I really, through honestly the first time, so I'll share that if you want to, but through a complete breakdown, because I couldn't get them all out. And so that really broke my heart, that I couldn't get them out. And because I was at the end of what my skill set level was. And so at that point is after I went to ministry school for 2 years, praying that would help me. And it did at a certain level, but it wasn't all of it. And so I realized I really needed to get a master's degree and take it seriously and look on what I now know as the neurological level of the other part, what they needed. So it wasn't just the emotional healing and the spiritual healing, it was also on the neurological level of how to make those changes in their life. And so that really helped me, as long as also with my own healing, personal healing, and my personal heartache that I had to face at that time. That was the darkest time of my life. And so thank God for Jesus himself and my husband. My husband stood by me in a very dark, horrible time. And my pastor, who is now gone on with the Lord, but he really helped me too. And I have a lot of help on that. But anyway, and so I got my master's degree, and thank God I found EMDR, because it really helped me to understand that neurological level that really brought my own personal healing. And now I've been able to not only help some women get out of human trafficking, but also my passion now is to train therapists, because now not only do I get to absorb my own healing, but I get to help therapists, because they have 50 to 60 clients. And so now I've helped hundreds of clinicians that then have 50 or 60 clients. And it's also now I've really helped thousands of women get out of this. And so it's just a huge passion of mine.
So just to sum this up, on a very personal level, because you obviously feel very passionately about helping people to heal and become whole. Yes. And at your wit's end, having used all that you can use.
All that I had.
Searching for some modality that was going to actually help make a fuller, deeper, wholer healing space for people. And EMDR was what helped bring, kind of cross those lines. And I think that it's important for our listeners to understand that there are many aspects, many things involved in the healing process. It's not just having a thought or understanding why you do the things you do. There's also this whole mechanism going on in the brain and in the body, and understanding our bodies and our minds as operating systems. That need to be addressed as an operating system. And there are tools that can profoundly help.
Absolutely.
To make that more useful. And I knew this was going to happen.
I know, right?
We're already, I know, we're already stepping up on our first break. Yeah. So in the next segment, we are going to be introducing what EMDR or how EMDR works. And as Amy and I talked earlier, this is a fairly complex mechanism, and we're going to try and make it as understandable as we can.
Yes.
And I'm glad I'm here because I can be the voice of people that are not therapists and, anyway, but so we're going to introduce more specifically EMDR and how it works, talk a little bit about neural networking, and stages of development briefly, and attachment theory. We may not get to all of it today. She might have to come back to elaborate on some of this. Yeah. So I think this is a really great place to segue out, and we will segue back in. We will be right back.
Are you tired of feeling stuck? Are you suffering from a chronic illness, addiction issues, lack of motivation, a negative mindset, and a lack of purpose? Do you dream of a life full of purpose and the ability to respond rather than react? And what if you could see yourself through the eyes of compassion while you're in the process of creating the life of your dreams? It will be a process. Dreammakers is designed to empower transformation from being stuck and unsatisfied to a life that is moving forward with purpose and joy. You will get clear on your dreams and the limiting subconscious beliefs that block you from seeing them through. You will learn and be supported in implementing tools that develop the mind-body connection and rewire your brain for success and mastery. Dreammakers is a 12-week online course with weekly live Zoom meetings, a book and workbook, access to accountability, and group support. Spots are limited. Experts say that if a person could do one thing to increase health and happiness, expressing gratitude would be it. Gratitude is an easy, attainable way to improve your outlook and begin rewiring your brain for resilience. You will learn the clinically proven benefits of a gratitude practice, why and how gratitude works to rewire your brain for resilience, and most importantly, a simple but powerful way to amplify your gratitude practice that will benefit your mind and body while improving your outlook. You're listening to Empowered Transformation with Christa Dawson. If you have questions or want to contact Christa, go to christadawson.com. Now, back to the show.
And we are back for our second segment. We've learned a little bit about Amy and how she got into therapy, or how she, the decisions that prompted her to become a therapist, the personal experiences she had in therapy, working with clients, and that leading to EMDR. She had used all that she knew how to use and needed more, and came across EMDR. So, Amy, tell us more about EMDR. What is EMDR?
Yes. Okay. So EMDR started out with more of a concept of what's called, EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And so that's what it started with. The research started with eye movements, back and forth, bilateral stimulation with eye movements. It's REM sleep. We knew or Francine Shapiro that first started it, she was, it's like, well, REM sleep, you move your eyes back and forth and then you get to process. Well, what if we started that and she was, the story is she's walking in a park and started using eye movements, and it helped her. And so there's a lot more to that story, but for time, just in general. And so then research started happening. This has been over 30 years ago. And so more research. And now it's an evidence-based practice, which means that it has been determined through the powers that be with therapy that it's evidence-based, so you can trust it.
Okay, beautiful. And something for our listeners, just so you understand, if you don't know this already, we process a tremendous amount, things that happen over the course of the day. We process while we're sleeping. And in that REM sleep, it's also known as a super learning state, and all kinds of healing comes in when we're in that brainwave state. It's a theta brainwave state. And so it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the woman who came up with this, developed this, started thinking, wow, if I can reproduce that brainwave state with the eye movement, it was setting the stage for the brain to be able to do what it needs to do to organize the information that it took in. And so specifically with a traumatic event. So tell us what this looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And starting off, my opinion, it makes sense that, you know, when we move at the neurological level, then our brain gets to process. And so just as you would need help if like your heart was hurting and physically hurting, you get a pacemaker. Well, there's no pacemaker for the brain, right? And so we've discovered, or Francine Shapiro discovered, and through research, that bilateral stimulation helps the brain to process. And so EMDR is an 8-phase processing where there's 8 phases, there's 3 stages. It becomes very complex. So therefore, as we talk, don't try this on yourself. Just find an EMDR therapist around you. And right now, since Zoom was started, you can get a therapist that's really, and it works very well over telehealth too. So there's a lot of different options for getting help, but EMDR works because it's a neurological level. And so I like to say that because it's the AIP model, which I know is technical, but it's called the adaptive information processing. All humans naturally go through that process. That's not a design of EMDR, that's the design of your brain. And so your brain wants to adapt, but when we have frozen memories due to trauma or emotional disturbance at any level, then there are times when our brain freezes in that level. And so then later on in life that I had to experience when I totally went through a breakdown after the human trafficking that I introduced, then I realized at that moment that this felt like that. And so I realized that I had this early on trauma that my brain was going back to. And that I realized through EMDR, and when I got that early childhood trauma unstuck and unfrozen, as they'd say, then I was able to process. So then when I was future triggered by that early negative belief that I created, then I was able to now hold on to my adaptive belief, which is part of the EMDR process to get that adaptive belief online. Then I was able to, next time when I was triggered, and like I said, this feels like that is all you really need to know. And then and sometimes you don't know that because it's implicit memory. So implicit memory means that it's basically nonverbal. It's not a consciously aware. So there's things that happen to us that we're not consciously aware of. And so EMDR helps the brain to process through those things. And so there's explicit memories too that we consciously know that happened to us. We can process through that too, because with EMDR, all it really takes to process is a negative core belief. Who doesn't have those?
Right. So this is a really good time for me to just quickly recap what you just shared with me, because I think there's some big pieces here. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the triggering that you got from working with these women, actually was the origins of that trauma was your own personal experience way back in your past, in your childhood. Okay. And so, and understanding, we all need to understand this. The brain encodes these memories. Sometimes these memories are before language.
Implicit.
Before we even have language, and it's encoded as a feeling. Yeah. So
in your body, like Bessel van der Kolk says, the body keeps the score.
Yes. And so again, the importance of understanding or taking even a present day trauma, realizing that very frequently it can be linked to a trauma way in your past that gives you the opportunity to clear the present trauma and the past trauma. And that the eye movement helps bring the brain into a state where it's able to effectively reprocess
and
that experience.
reconsolidate. That's the
Right.
word in the brain. It's
So
reconsolidating it.
Explain reconsolidating, and you used another
Yeah.
term earlier, assign or assess. What was the term? You were replacing it with something else.
The positively strengthening or installation. Is that what your installation
I'm not
phase?
Sure. Well,
anyway,
I'm sure it'll come back out.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll come back out. So I just asked you to elaborate on, and now I can't remember.
It's okay. Yeah. Elaborate. I know, right? So elaborate on, that reprocessing. Is that what you said?
And the reconsolidating.
And reconsolidating. Yes. So when we reconsolidate a memory, so when it's the concept of wires that fire, neurons that wire together, fire together. And so in your brain, the positive side of it is, let's say you learned to play the piano and you became really good at it, or riding a bike, which is very, so that's adaptive. So as you learn it, or driving a car, you don't have to think about driving a car anymore. It becomes more of an implicit behavior. You're not thinking about it anymore. You're just doing it. So also on the negative side, the neurological things get also created in our brain, that when we create a negative belief because we had to survive, right? The brain survives. If you're alive, you survived, right? And so therefore, as you as you continue to grow and learn and age, then sometimes you're later on in life, it really does affect you. And so for me, it was not only in the human trafficking aspect, but I had a child that was 5. And so personally, I saw the 5-year-old with my eyes. And so the two came together, and it really caused a big lapse back to that 5-year-old state where I was terrified. And so those two things together, it was like the perfect storm in the negative way. And so, that's where my faith comes in too, is because I know that for me, Jesus met me there. And so he helped me to walk through and to stay connected with him until I found EMDR, right? Because I was still living. I still had to live my daily life with my family, with just life. And so that is that process that EMDR now goes through, of helping unfreeze those memories so you can bring that reprocessing, so the brain back and forth. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do eye movements. You could do tapping, walking. It's the bilateral stimulation as well as the dual attention.
Right. And so in that bilateral stimulation, just so people understand, it's activating both sides of the brain?
Yes. So activating left side, right side, left side, right side.
Right.
And so it's that 8 phases that the EMDR therapist takes you through at the same time. So there's phase 1, case conceptualization, phase 2, preparation, access and activate, then you desensitize, then you install the adaptive belief. And
the adaptive belief, that's what I was looking for. And is the adaptive belief, is that connected to, we've talked about resourcing?
Yes.
Is there a connection between those two? Because it would
that's the resourcing that helps you to get that connection with the adaptive belief. And so if you resource well enough, and that's where the therapist comes in. So that's why you don't do this on your own. So yes, so resourcing is that side of developing those grounding skills, the coping skills, all of those skills that help you to stay grounded so that you can look at these traumatic memories. Yes. You can go back and look at these incidents, because EMDR is 3-pronged, which means you look at the future target, a present target, and the past. Because when you create these negative beliefs, it affects your past, present, and future. Because at some point you created it. So that's why you go back to the past. And then where is it presently coming up? Where does your past become present? And then is there a future target that you're afraid of because you created this negative belief? So it's all connected. And it's like a domino. The domino just goes, and you get to see people just let it all come back into place. And that's the reconsolidation.
Beautiful. And so from my perspective, I'm not a trained therapist, but I am a coach that understands the mechanisms involved in healing, so in terms of, so meeting a troubled memory with a soothed body and mind, or that grounded space, that resourced space. And there are ways that a person can invite that resourcing or that grounded space through, even through physical cues, through your breath, through visualization, through EFT is a great way to start learning how to resource, to how to regulate your nervous system. So if you do get triggered, you can bring yourself back. And so helping a person learn how to resource and that leads them into more effectively being able to reconsolidate. And the last stage there, which we were talking about.
And well, last stage is actually reevaluation, but in the middle of it is installation. That's where we got to. And I know the EMDR talking about it can be so complex, but I think the main thing that's really important for everybody to see is that it's integrative into every modality of counseling. It's actually, I look at it like the container that holds every modality, because you can integrate anything. Therapists can integrate anything that they use. You mentioned EFT, great. There's so many IFS, like I could go in and all of the acronyms of counseling that you can integrate in, because I like to say that EMDR is an art. It helps people to repaint the picture of their life the way they want it to be instead of the way that it is. And no matter how, even if you start with a stick figure, that's where they're at. But you help them to add more color, help them to add more things. And so resourcing helps that, processing helps that, installation helps that. My favorite is actually the mini future template, which is towards the end, because you get to help them connect with, how do you now put this in to the last stage of getting that adaptive belief or getting those positive beliefs into your day-to-day life so you can walk it out.
Beautiful. I love it. So we're getting close to the end of our second segment, and I would like for you to, we're going to go into attachment theory.
Yes.
So Amy she specializes in attachment informed EMDR. So set the stage for us for this next segment.
Yeah.
Give us a little overview of what attachment theory is.
Yes, attachment theory actually started a long time ago, not to get too in depth with that because that would take too much time. But right now what we're learning is that attachment, like if you listen to anything with Gabor Mate, it's excellent. He introduces it, short YouTube video. I recommend everybody looking it up. Attachment authenticity is what it's called. But it introduces what we've learned about attachment theory and how we need that. We need to attach to something so that we can see these really scary, awful memories, so that we can reconsolidate that, we can process it, we can look at it so that we can face it. Because, the old saying that mental health is avoiding pain. Mental illness is those who avoid pain. And so you have to face it to get through it. And that's scary. And so attachment theory helps you to face that and to hold on to it so you can get through it. That's what I think. That's what I've seen.
Beautiful. And so we'll be talking about, what that can look like, attachment theory can look like. I think it's also, and we will elaborate on this in our last segment, I think it's really important for us to understand we are required as infants. We had requirements for needs to be met through nourishment, or not nourishment, but nurturing. There is an absolute requirement for an infant in terms of nurture from a parent for their brains and their neurochemistry to develop correctly. And so if you've developed coping mechanisms as a result of not getting enough nurture, it's alive and well. And so the good news is you can recultivate that for yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's
what the amazing thing that we know about the brain now. And it just helps just revolutionize all of this. Yes. And so I'd love to talk more about attachment. Yes.
So that's where we're going to go. Next segment, we will be right back.
Are you tired of feeling stuck? Are you suffering from a chronic illness, addiction issues, lack of motivation, a negative mindset, and a lack of purpose? Do you dream of a life full of purpose and the ability to respond rather than react? And what if you could see yourself through the eyes of compassion while you're in the process of creating the life of your dreams? It will be a process. Dreammakers is designed to empower transformation from being stuck and unsatisfied to a life that is moving forward with purpose and joy. You will get clear on your dreams and the limiting subconscious beliefs that block you from seeing them through. You will learn and be supported in implementing tools that develop the mind-body connection and rewire your brain for success and mastery. Dreammakers is a 12-week online course with weekly live Zoom meetings, a book and workbook, access to accountability, and group support. Spots are limited. Experts say that if a person could do one thing to increase health and happiness, expressing gratitude would be it. Gratitude is an easy, attainable way to improve your outlook and begin rewiring your brain for resilience. You will learn the clinically proven benefits of a gratitude practice, why and how gratitude works to rewire your brain for resilience, and most importantly, a simple but powerful way to amplify your gratitude practice that will benefit your mind and body while improving your outlook. You're listening to Empowered Transformation with Christa Dawson. If you have questions or want to contact Christa, go to christadawson.com. Now, back to the show.
And we are back for our final segment. The time flies. And as promised, I'm going to share with you Christa's tip of the week. And this week, the tip is, and I didn't have you do this earlier today, but I will have us close with this. And that tip is, when you're feeling dysregulated, when you're feeling out of your body or frustrated, put your hand over your heart center. That brings all of your awareness into your body. It brings you into the moment. It's a powerful, powerful tool. And so I'm going to really encourage you to experiment with that over the next week. Placing your hand over your heart, maybe even putting a gentle smile on your face, taking a deep breath in and out, and notice where your attention goes. And I assure you, it will come into your body. It's a very grounding tool. So I hope you enjoy that over this next week. And I also wanted to take a minute to point out in your break there, you heard about a gratitude practice. It's a freebie that I offer. You can find access to it from my website. It's free. It comes with a free video on how to do a sequence that I find really powerful, that really expands on that gratitude practice and makes it bigger and better for you and your life. And so go to christadawson.com and find that free gratitude practice guideline. And so without any further ado, this is super exciting stuff. Let's elaborate on attachment theory. So we've got a little bit on that. Let's open that up a little bit further.
Yeah, absolutely.
More.
So with attachment theory and how you really implement that into EMDR is Laurel Parnell. I want to give the credit for her. She came up with this, designed it, is that you connect with three figures when you're connecting with that resourcing stage with EMDR. They're called your nurturing figures, your protective figures, and your wise figures. And so once you help the client connect with those things that are true in their life, and they can always be updated too with anything that they need to face that situation. But the one important part of that is really finding that connection. And so with me, like you said, that I specialize in the faith perspective. And so for me, the one that works with all of my clients that are Christians is Jesus. And so I, can help them to connect back with their faith. If they don't believe in Jesus, obviously we find another one. But most of my clients, they find me because that's where I specialize in. And so I help them, to connect with him, to bring him in. So when they're scared, when they're looking at these traumatic memories, we just say, ask Jesus to step forward. Ask him to step forward. Where do you need him right now? Do you need him as your nurturing figure, your wise figure, your protective figure? I'm very client-centered, so they get to choose. They always get to choose. And so, like I said, if it's not Jesus, then we'll find them what it is. But with most of my clients, it is. And so I help them to see him. And so that's the part where when they need it, it helps. And then they start to clear those negative beliefs easier. It helps to unfreeze those incidents so that they can connect with their adaptive belief. So like adaptive belief that I see a lot is I'm a child of God. And so, it's internal locus of control, just like you said, when your hand on your heart, because Christians, when you're truly walking with God, I know a lot of people say they're Christians and that can cause a lot of pain. And I'm not going to go there today, but the health of that is that if Jesus lives inside of you truly, then you can put your hand on your heart and he can walk you through that. And so I've seen it over and over and over. And so that's just my experience.
And so for people who maybe are not inclined with the Christian tradition, some of the things that come to mind for me is for people to understand, I have clients and I've got a variety of different clients with a lot of different beliefs. And, they'll come to me and they don't see themselves as a particularly spiritual person, but they come to me with this desire to understand, the origins of why I do the things that I do and how can I clear these and how can I find a better way to live for myself, one that's free from my past and my programs. And the idea that we all have access to inner guidance, Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, we all have access to that. And there are things that you can do to really help you to gain access to that wisdom as well. And and understanding, regardless of who your wise one is, and I don't remember the three, who that is, the understanding that you developed these mechanisms to cope. They're coping mechanisms. There's nothing you need to be ashamed about.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
That's
how you survived through the traumatic experience. So when you're introducing back to the attachment theory, is like you said earlier, when you're an infant, you need that nurturing. So that was one of the other ones, is a nurturing figure. And so ideally, it's supposed to be your mom and dad, right? And so they hold you close, left brain to right brain connection as they're holding the baby. They've literally found that Alan Shore, you look him up, they found that there's a part of the brain that's actually created if there's those attachment, and if there is an attachment, then it's not created. But that doesn't mean that they can't repair. It's called neuroplasticity. So your brain can heal, and so you're never too gone. It's like there's just help for anyone. And so anytime there's a negative core belief, that's why EMDR is integrated with every theory. Because, if you walk through those 8 phases and those 3 stages, you can clear so much. And it doesn't mean that it happens every time, but there's processes and there's advanced trainings and there's so much to learn. That's why I ask for grace even as I talk about it, because I can't possibly know everything there is to know about EMDR and the brain. I mean, they even make jokes that we only know 10% of it. So, we do with what we know. And I'm just very thankful. And I feel blessed that we have EMDR and that we have the ability to connect with those attachment figures, because all it needs to be is attributes and qualities. The definition of a gentle, nurturing attachment figure. It doesn't matter if it's a dog or Jesus. I mean, obviously it's what is truer to you. And so it's the truth. you go back to your truth, what's true for you in the moment. And that's why the more adaptive your brain gets, or the more positive beliefs that you start to believe, then the more those attachment figures may develop into something greater and greater and greater. And so, yeah, I believe that there's, nothing greater than God, and you can't get higher than that, but that's my personal belief. And so that's, just where my focus has been mostly. And there's only so much time in the day. So when people come to me, they usually come to me for that. So anyway,
Right.
but when I consult with consultants that are going through certification or basic training, then I just teach them to meet their client where they're at with those attachment figures. And that's why I've seen it. It's genius. I mean, Laura Parnell that first came up with it, hats off to her and thank you, because it gave us such an amazing tool to use.
Mm-hmm. I think some interesting little side notes, because you're alluding to this and have several times. The brain cannot tell the difference between the memory of an event and an actual event, and your brain will believe whatever you tell it,
right,
to a certain, and so cultivating, or again, creating those, you can be really creative in creating those figures in your life, like you described, they can be a pet, it can be any number of things that can help to ground and center and nurture. And because the brain will believe whatever you tell it, and the brain can't tell the difference between the memory of an event and an actual event, you can re-trigger yourself just thinking about triggering an event. But the good news is you can, like we talked about earlier, you can re-nurture yourself through these old painful experiences that you've lived with or experienced, that you've encapsulated, and they're affecting you today, that you can re-embody that for yourself, however that looks, as you're being guided by your therapist through this process. And so there is so much hope.
There is.
We're wired to heal. We have all that we need within ourselves to heal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so having these modalities that help us to access that ability to heal is so powerful.
Right.
So powerful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Is there anything that you want to expand on a little bit further? We have a little bit of time to play around.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What are some of your favorite resourcing tools? How do you, so clearly your faith is a huge resourcing tool. What are other resourcing tools that you use?
Yeah, I use, it's some of the basics with EMDR that everybody's trained in basic training. We start off with it. One is called securing your space, because it's very essential for everybody to secure their space that they're at, because that's what we have control over, our space. And so one of the things too that's essential with EMDR is that you can only control yourself, right? You can only process through things that have happened to you. And so it's very client focused. And so with adaptive beliefs, it has to be an internal locus of control. So the things that we can actually believe. And so that's possible to believe. And so when it comes to the resourcing and developing those resources, it's really important that each individual client connects with it. So we just start them where they're at. So it's breathing techniques, it's acupressure techniques, it's grounding techniques with, even if we use ice, where it's like, as a therapist, we can use that, grounds people. But with EMDR, one of their tools is a peaceful place. Some people call it a safe place. I don't use safe because that could trigger somebody that they've never had a safe place. But peaceful place is a definition. And so it's peaceful. It's, what comes to mind. And we go and we spend a lot of time, people who are really intense trauma, they may spend a lot of time with resourcing. So it is very, very important.
Yes. And that is something for folks to understand, is that the ability to resource is a huge component in all of this. And if you can't resource, if you haven't developed that, and know that it is a developed skill.
Yes.
And if you haven't developed that, they can't they aren't going to go further with you until you have established the ability to be able to regulate yourself out of those traumatized states.
Yes.
Because otherwise you can't safely reapproach those memories.
Right.
And so it's more important to them to help you get into that place where you can effectively resource, so it isn't absolutely terrifying when you are facing into this. And so understanding that that is a cultivated skill, and there are a lot of ways to cultivate that skill. So,
and it's available to everybody.
Yes.
Everybody can learn to resource everyone.
Yes. Yes. And there are so many ways to do it. You know, whether it's mindfulness practices, whether it's meditation, whether it's EFT, whether it's yoga, whether it's visualization skills, working with a therapist to help you cultivate those resourcing tools.
Absolutely.
So we are coming to the end of our hour, and I wanted to give Amy plenty of time to tell us where we can find her. Perhaps you're a therapist listening to this and you want to know more about how to get certified using EMDR, and where people that are interested in maybe working with her, or how can a person find a therapist locally that does, you know, in their community that does EMDR. So tell us more about where we can find you and how people can more effectively find EMDR.
Yes. Well, my hero in the EMDR community is Roy Kiesling, and he developed EMDR consulting. So the number one place that I would send anybody is emdrconsulting.com. You can find a therapist link. You can link right on there. And then therefore, anybody who's been trained by Roy is available on that, which I think is amazing. Basic training that adheres to all of the standards of EMDR. Like you said earlier, then EMDR is the governing body for EMDR that keeps it all, the fidelity of the model to the standard protocol, which is really good. So emdrconsulting.com. To find me, it's really easy. It's EMDR with Amy V at gmail.com. So it's really easy. If you want to find me, you can ask me any question. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. But that's where anybody can start.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And you can find me at christadawson.com. You can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn, and you can find me on Voice America. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to have everybody close your eyes, align your posture, put a gentle smile on your face, place your hand over your heart center, and feel gratitude for honoring yourself, for being here today. Feel gratitude for anything that you may have learned, and feel gratitude that there is hope. There is hope for you to heal and to step into wholeness. Take a nice deep breath in and a long, slow exhale out. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Empowered Transformation with Christa Dawson. We hope you have gained insight into the healing process and added tools to your tool belt. Until we talk again, have a beautiful week.